Dear Mama, I saved you the cobbler, even though Uncle wanted it. Love. Those purple crayon words would topple a billion-dollar empire and expose a truth America wasn't ready to hear. But this story doesn't start with headlines. It starts with hunger disguised as hope. September 15, 2023. Lincoln Park. A 7-year-old girl sets 4 places for guests who will never arrive. To anyone walking by, it looks like make-believe. It wasn't make-believe. It was survival. Are you waiting for someone, sweetheart? A jogger asks, stopping mid-stride. The little girl looks up and smiles. They're already here. Mama's in the blue chair. Daddy's got the corner spot. And that one, that's for whoever needs it most. The jogger walks away, unsettled. But across the park, someone else is watching. Marcus Wellington. Age 52. Net worth $2.3 billion. Built his fortune demolishing neighborhoods exactly like this one. Glass towers, luxury condos, profit margins that would make Wall Street jealous. Yet something about this child's ritual stops him cold. He knows hunger. He knows what it means to pretend you're not invisible. 23 years ago, he slept on church steps while his mother counted food stamps with shaking hands. Now he watches through his penthouse telescope as little Kaya carefully slides a crayon-written napkin under one empty plate. The napkin reads, "For Mama's medicine money." She thinks I don't know, but I do. Marcus sets down his telescope. His hands shake. 3 blocks away, Kaya's mother Vera lies on a worn couch. Lupus medication bottles scattered across the coffee table. Medical bills stacked 6 inches high. The last grocery run was 12 days ago. Vera promised her daughter Sunday chicken dinners. Promised birthday parties. Promised everything would be okay. But Lupus doesn't negotiate with promises. Neither does poverty. So Kaya adapted. Every Saturday, same time, same place. Grand feasts with nothing but faith and folded napkins. She raises her plastic cup in a toast, to Mama getting better. To Daddy coming home. And to people who forgot what hungry feels like. 20 minutes later, Marcus appears at the park. Expensive shoes on grass. Clean hands folding into fists. Mind if I join? Kaya studies him. The kind of person who usually calls security instead of sitting down. You can take the rabbit's seat. He won't mind sharing. Marcus sits cross-legged, awkward in designer jeans. What's for dinner? Hope stew and maybe tomorrow bread. But it tastes better if you believe. For 30 minutes, they eat nothing together. Marcus finds himself laughing at invisible jokes, toasting with plastic cups, listening to stories about a father who sends letters but no money, a mother who hides pain behind bedtime songs. Then Kaya slides another napkin across the blanket. If you're rich, why do you look so hungry? That question would haunt Marcus Wellington for weeks. Because this master of mergers and acquisitions had spent 20 years building an empire designed to erase places exactly like Lincoln Park. And Lincoln Park? It was scheduled for demolition in 37 days. Same time next week? Kaya asks, packing her plastic plates. Marcus nods, unable to speak. He remains seated on the grass, staring at purple crayon words that somehow carry more weight than his entire Forbes profile. He doesn't know it yet, but that little girl just handed him a choice that will cost him everything. What if you were the only one without food? If this story resonates, subscribe and let us know why you care. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing you can do is show up when someone needs you most. Next week, the billionaire brings real food to a fake feast. Her mother's reaction will shock you. A billionaire sits in the dirt, eating invisible food with a 7-year-old who just asked him why he looks so hungry. Around them, wildflowers bloom through cracked concrete, as if nature itself refuses to give up hope. This is where innocence meets empire. And one of them is about to break. The next Saturday arrives like clockwork. Marcus Wellington trades his $1,000 suit for jeans and sneakers. His driver drops him 2 blocks away. He can't explain why he's walking toward a park where a child serves nothing on plastic plates. But he keeps walking anyway. Kaya is already there. 4 plates arranged in perfect squares. Fresh dandelions tucked behind each plastic fork. She's turned weeds into centerpieces, poverty into art. "You came back," she says, not looking up from her careful arrangements. "I said I would." Adults say lots of things. She finally meets his eyes. They don't usually mean them. Marcus sits in the same spot. The grass stains his designer jeans, but he doesn't care. Something about this ritual demands respect, not comfort. Kaya begins her weekly ceremony. She serves invisible portions with the precision of a 5-star chef. "Today we have rainbow soup because Mama loves colors, and cloud bread because it makes you feel light inside." She passes Marcus an empty bowl. "Careful, it's hot." He pretends to blow on nothing. The absurdity should embarrass him. Instead, it feels like the most honest meal he's had in years. "My mama used to make rainbow soup," Marcus says quietly. "Back when we had a kitchen." Kaya tilts her head. "What happened to your kitchen?" "We lost it." "Lost everything, actually. I was about your age. That's why you look hungry. You forgot how to eat hope." The words hit him like a physical blow. This child sees through 20 years of carefully constructed armor with the clarity of someone who's never learned to lie to herself. Kaya reaches into a small paper bag. "I brought real cookies today." She places 2 sugar cookies on his plate. "Mama made them before her hands got too shaky." Marcus stares at the cookies. Real food at a pretend feast. The irony isn't lost on him. "She doesn't know I took them," Kaya whispers. "But I think sharing makes them taste better." He bites into homemade sweetness that probably cost Vera her last $5 in ingredients. The guilt nearly chokes him. "Why do you come here?" he asks. "Because here, everybody gets enough." She spreads her arms wide, encompassing the empty chairs. "In our apartment, there's never enough. Never enough food, never enough medicine, never enough time before the lights get turned off again." She picks dandelions and places one by each plate. "But here there's enough hope for everyone." Marcus watches her transform a patch of grass into a banquet hall through pure belief. She's 7 years old and already understands something he spent decades forgetting: abundance isn't about having more. It's about sharing what little you have. "My daddy sends letters," Kaya continues, arranging napkins. "He's in a place where they don't let you leave. But he draws pictures of us having picnics when he comes home." She pulls out a folded paper. A crayon drawing of 3 stick figures around a table loaded with food. The father figure has tears drawn as blue dots on his face. He cries in his letters. Says he's sorry he can't bring the chicken he promised. She traces the drawing with her finger. "So I bring the chicken here. Even if it's invisible, it still counts." Marcus realizes he's witnessing something sacred. This isn't just pretend play. It's a child's rebellion against a world that decided she doesn't matter. "What about your mama? Does she know about your picnics?" Kaya's smile falters. "She thinks I'm just playing. She doesn't know I'm practicing." "Practicing for what?" "For when she gets better. When Daddy comes home. When we have a real table instead of our broken one." She looks directly at him. "When people like you remember that people like us are still people." The accusation lands without malice, which makes it cut deeper. A jogger passes by, glances at them sitting on the ground with plastic plates, and shakes her head. Marcus sees the judgment in her eyes. The dismissal. The way she looks at Kaya like she's invisible. He recognizes that look. He's worn it himself for 20 years. People walk by and see nothing, Kaya says, following his gaze. But nothing is still something if you believe hard enough. She raises her plastic cup. To people who see us. To people who remember what it feels like to need a chair at someone else's table. Marcus raises his cup. The toast feels like a promise he doesn't know how to keep. As they pack up, Kaya hands him another napkin. This one reads, "Rich people cry too, but nobody talks about it." He stares at the words until they blur. "Same time next week?" she asks. He nods, pockets the napkin, and watches her skip toward home. Around him, the wildflowers sway in the breeze, refusing to acknowledge they're growing in impossible places. That night, Marcus sits in his penthouse office, surrounded by contracts worth more money than most people see in lifetimes. But all he can think about is a 7-year-old who serves hope on plastic plates and sees hunger in Billionaire's eyes. Remember a time you felt invisible? If this touched you, share your story in the comments. Because Monday morning, Marcus Wellington would make a decision that would either destroy his empire or transform it into something worth saving. And across town, Kaya's mother would discover her daughter's secret. Her reaction would change everything. From his 42nd floor office window, Marcus Wellington can see Kaya's park. A tiny green square surrounded by glass towers that scrape the sky like desperate fingers reaching for heaven. The view costs him $12,000 a month in rent. The distance between his world and hers? Immeasurable. But Sunday night, that distance collapsed into a single phone call that would shatter everything. Vera Martinez works 3 jobs to keep the lights on. Night shift at the hospital cafeteria. Weekend cleaning at the office complex. Early morning stocking shelves before most people wake up. Lupus doesn't care about her schedule. Neither does poverty. She comes home Saturday evening to find sugar cookie crumbs on Kaya's dress. "Baby, where did these come from?" Kaya freezes, caught between truth and protection. I made friends." "What kind of friends?" "The kind who sit in the grass and don't mind eating invisible food." Vera's blood runs cold. She knows what happens to little black girls who talk to strangers in parks. She's seen the news. Read the statistics. Felt the fear every mother in their neighborhood carries like a second heartbeat. "Show me," she demands, grabbing her cane and Kaya's hand. They walk the 4 blocks to Lincoln Park as the sun sets behind Marcus's tower. Vera limps, her joints screaming protest, but fear drives her forward. She needs to see this man who's been sitting with her daughter. They arrive to find the park empty except for plastic plates scattered across the grass. Evidence of innocence. Proof of hope. But to Vera, it looks like vulnerability packaged in children's games. "This is where you've been coming?" Kaya nods, suddenly uncertain. "Mama, he's nice. He pretends to eat the invisible food. He doesn't laugh at me." "Baby, you can't trust people just because they're nice to you." "But he looks hungry like us." Vera's heart breaks and hardens simultaneously. Her 7-year-old daughter is trying to feed the world with nothing but faith and plastic spoons. The beauty of it terrifies her. Above them, 42 floors up, Marcus stares down at 2 figures on his telescope. A woman leaning heavily on a cane, a child pointing at empty chairs. He can't hear their conversation, but he recognizes fear when he sees it. His phone buzzes. A text from his assistant: "Board meeting moved to Monday 8 a.m. They want to discuss the Lincoln Park project." The Lincoln Park project. Demolition starts in 34 days. Luxury condos will replace every blade of grass where Kaya hosts her impossible feasts. Marcus has the power to stop it. One signature, one board vote, one moment of conscience over capital. But his empire is built on projects exactly like this one. Poor neighborhoods demolished. Profitable towers erected. Displacement disguised as development. He's gentrified 17 neighborhoods in the past decade. Made billions by making invisible people disappear completely. His phone buzzes again. This time it's his lawyer. Wellington Holdings lawsuit filed today. Residents claiming discrimination in housing displacement. Media picking up the story. The irony hits him like a freight train. While he sits in million-dollar office space, the people he's displaced are fighting back. And somewhere in that legal paperwork, there's probably a family just like Kaya's. Down in the park, Vera helps Kaya gather the plastic plates. We're not coming back here, baby. But what about the invisible guests? What about Hope Stew? We'll make Hope Stew at home. But home doesn't have enough chairs. Vera stops packing, stares at her daughter. 7 years old and already carrying the weight of scarcity like a family heirloom passed down through generations. How long have you been doing this? She asks gently. Since you started crying at night when you think I'm sleeping. The admission hangs in the air between them. Children see everything. Feel everything. Absorb the stress their parents try desperately to hide. Mama, poor people deserve to eat too, right? Even if the food isn't real. Vera pulls Kaya close, breathing in the scent of childhood innocence mixed with the harsh reality of having nothing to give but love. Yes, baby. Everyone deserves to eat. Then why do rich people build walls so they don't have to see us being hungry? The question cuts through decades of accepted inequality. A 7-year-old has just diagnosed America's greatest shame with surgical precision. Marcus watches them leave through his telescope. 2 small figures walking toward shadows, carrying plastic plates like precious cargo. He could call his driver, follow them, offer help. But help from him would come with strings attached. Conditions. Control. Instead, he pulls out his phone and makes a different call. Gerald, it's Marcus. I want you to pull the files on every family we've displaced in the last 5 years. I want names, addresses, current situations. Sir, that's over 3,000 families. May I ask why? Marcus looks down at the empty park where Kaya served him invisible hope on plastic plates. Because I think I've been hungry for the wrong things. He hangs up and walks to his liquor cabinet. 50-year-old whiskey worth more than most people's annual salary. He pours 3 fingers, takes 1 sip, and sets it down. It tastes like guilt. Monday morning arrives with news that will change everything. The lawsuit against Wellington Holdings has a new lead plaintiff. A woman named Vera Martinez, mother of 1, fighting eviction from subsidized housing. The same Vera Martinez whose daughter serves hope to strangers in Lincoln Park. Marcus stares at the legal document, his hands shaking. The universe has just presented him with an impossible choice: save his empire by destroying Kaya's family, or save Kaya's family by risking everything he's built. What do you see when you look away from suffering? If you wish to see change, hit subscribe and join the movement. Because in 12 hours, Marcus Wellington will walk into a boardroom where 17 executives will vote on whether to demolish the only place in the city where a little girl can feed invisible guests. And Kaya's mother just declared war on the man her daughter calls friend. The napkin arrives at Marcus Wellington's penthouse at 6:47 a.m., slipped under his door while he slept. Purple crayon on white paper. Mr. Tall Man, Mama says we can't be friends anymore. But friends don't stop being friends just because grown-ups get scared. Right? The most powerful real estate mogul in the city is being counseled by a 7-year-old who doesn't even know his name. 3 blocks away, Vera Martinez paces her cramped apartment, lupus flaring in her joints like fire. She found Kaya's secret stash last night. 17 napkin notes hidden under her mattress. Love letters to a world that's forgotten how to love back. Dear Daddy, I saved you soup even though the bowl was empty. Dear God, please make Mama's medicine work faster. Dear rich people, we're still here even when you don't look. Each note a tiny rebellion against erasure. Each word proof that invisible children refuse to stay invisible. Vera holds the napkins like evidence in a trial she's destined to lose. Her daughter has been writing hope into existence while their world crumbles around them. The beauty of it breaks her heart. The danger of it terrifies her soul. Marcus sits in his marble bathroom, reading Kaya's latest note while his $1,000 coffee grows cold. The board meeting starts in 90 minutes. 17 executives will vote on Lincoln Park's demolition. The same park where a little girl taught him that hunger has nothing to do with empty stomachs. His phone buzzes. A text from his head attorney, Martinez lawsuit gaining media traction. 3 news outlets want statements. Recommend standard deflection protocol. Standard deflection protocol. Corporate speak for, make the poor people disappear. But how do you make someone disappear when they've been writing you love letters in purple crayon? Kaya sits at her kitchen table, a broken crayon in her hand, composing today's napkin note. The words come slowly, carefully, like she's writing scripture. Dear Mr. Tall Man, Mama says you might be one of the bad people who take away parks. But you ate my invisible soup. Bad people don't eat invisible soup. They just throw it away. She pauses, chewing the crayon tip. Outside, bulldozers idle in the construction yard, waiting for demolition orders. 33 days until Lincoln Park becomes luxury condos. I asked Mama why rich people hate poor people so much. She said they don't hate us. They just forgot we exist. But you remember. I can tell because you look sad when you eat nothing with me. Marcus arrives at Wellington Holdings at 7:30 a.m. The building stretches 42 floors into the sky, each floor a monument to his ability to transform neighborhoods into profit margins. The irony isn't lost on him. He built his empire by erasing places exactly like the one where he learned to hope again. The elevator rises past floors of employees who depend on his decisions for their livelihoods. Past conference rooms where families like Kaya's become line items in development budgets. Past windows that offer panoramic views of a city divided by invisible walls of wealth and want. Floor 38. The boardroom where 17 people will decide whether a little girl keeps her sanctuary or loses it to progress. Vera makes a decision that will change everything. She calls the one reporter who's been covering displacement stories in their neighborhood. Marcus Rivera from Channel 7 News. A man who understands that sometimes the most important stories happen in the smallest spaces. I want to tell you about my daughter, she says, her voice steady despite the fear. She's been feeding imaginary guests in Lincoln Park. And I think one of those guests might be the billionaire who's trying to destroy our home. The reporter's interest sharpens. David versus Goliath sells newspapers. Poor child versus rich developer writes itself. But Vera isn't thinking about headlines. She's thinking about 17 napkin notes that prove her daughter refuses to accept that poverty means powerlessness. Marcus enters the boardroom carrying Kaya's latest note in his jacket pocket. 17 faces turn toward him. Men and women who've built fortunes by making hard choices seem easy. Today's choice should be simple: demolish a park, build luxury housing, increase quarterly profits by 47%. But simple choices don't usually come with purple crayon letters from 7-year-olds. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus begins, before we vote on Lincoln Park, I want to share something with you. He pulls out the napkin note and reads it aloud. 17 of the city's most powerful executives listen to a child's words in stunned silence. She writes to her father in prison. To her sick mother. To God. And now she's writing to me. He folds the napkin carefully. The question isn't whether we can demolish this park. The question is whether we should. Board member Patricia Cross leans forward. Marcus, with respect, we're not in the business of preserving children's playgrounds. We're in the business of creating value. What if I told you this child's story could create more value than any building we construct? The room shifts uncomfortably. Sentiment doesn't appear on profit and loss statements. Explain, demands board member Trevor Kane. Marcus walks to the window overlooking Lincoln Park. 42 floors below, he can see Kaya's usual spot. Empty chairs waiting for invisible guests. 3 months ago, we were just another real estate company with a public relations problem. Displacement lawsuits, community protests, media coverage that makes us look like the villains in other people's stories. He turns back to the room. This child has been writing us a different story. One where we're not the villains. One where we remember what we're really building. The silence stretches like a held breath. We have two choices, Marcus continues. Demolish the park and own another development that displaces another family. Or preserve it and own the story of the company that chose community over quarterly reports. Patricia cross-checks her watch. We're not running a charity, Marcus. No, we're running a business that forgot why communities matter. His phone buzzes. A text from an unknown number. Mr. Wellington, this is Marcus Rivera, Channel 7 News. We're running a story tonight about a little girl in Lincoln Park who writes letters to invisible friends. One of those friends appears to be you. Would you like to comment? The story is already escaping his control. In 6 hours, the city will know about Kaya's napkin notes. About invisible feasts and empty chairs. About a billionaire who sits in the dirt eating nothing with a child who has nothing to give but hope. Would you let your voice be silenced? If you believe every voice matters, subscribe and tell us why. The board stares at Marcus, waiting for his decision. Outside, news vans are already pulling up to Lincoln Park. And somewhere in a cramped apartment, a 7-year-old girl writes another napkin note, unaware that her purple crayon words are about to change everything. Marcus Wellington stands outside the boardroom, 17 missed calls from reporters burning up his phone. The story broke at 3 p.m. Billionaire developer befriends homeless child he's about to evict. Channel 7 ran it with footage of Kaya setting empty plates in Lincoln Park, purple crayon notes scattered like evidence of something beautiful the world wasn't ready to understand. But the footage doesn't show what happened next. The moment that changed everything. 4 hours earlier, before the news vans arrived, before the lawyers started damage control, Marcus made a decision that terrified him. He walked away from the board meeting. Left 17 executives staring at quarterly projections while he took an elevator down 42 floors to street level. He needed to see Kaya one more time before her world exploded. She's already at the park when he arrives, arranging plastic forks with the precision of someone who's learned that small rituals hold broken worlds together. But today something's different. Her movements are faster, more urgent, like she's racing against time. You came, she says without looking up. Even though Mama said you might be one of the building-stealing people. Your Mama's smart to be careful. But she doesn't know about your hungry eyes. Kaya finally looks at him. You still look hungry, even after all our invisible feasts. Marcus sits in his usual spot, grass staining his $1,000 suit. Around them, the city hums with the sound of progress that crushes as much as it creates. Kaya, I need to tell you something important. I know. She pulls out a napkin note, hands it to him. I wrote this before you came. The purple crayon words hit him like a physical blow. Dear friend who might not be my friend, if you have to choose between keeping your money or keeping our park, I understand. But remember that hungry people need places to eat invisible food too. She knew. Somehow, this 7-year-old understood the impossible choice bearing down on them both. How did you know? Grown-ups get a certain look when they're about to take things away from kids. She arranges invisible portions on plastic plates. My daddy had that look the night before they took him away. The weight of her wisdom crushes him. Children who've lost everything learn to read the signs of impending loss with heartbreaking accuracy. What if I told you I might be able to save the park? Kaya stops arranging plates. What would it cost you? The question floors him. No adult has asked him about the price of doing right. They only ask about the profit of doing wrong. Maybe everything I've built. Buildings or people? Buildings. Then it's not really everything. She passes him an empty plate. People are more everything than buildings. A car pulls up at the park's edge. Vera Martinez emerges slowly, leaning heavily on her cane, followed by a man with a news camera. Marcus recognizes him from the business channel. Marcus Rivera, the reporter who's been covering displacement stories. This is the moment the private becomes public. The quiet becomes noise. The choice becomes consequences. Mama brought the television man, Kaya whispers. She's trying to save our park too. Vera approaches cautiously, her eyes never leaving Marcus. She's dressed in her best clothes, the ones she saves for job interviews and court dates. Her daughter's future depends on how the next 5 minutes unfold. Mr. Wellington. Her voice is steady, controlled. I'm Vera Martinez. Kaya's mother. Ms. Martinez. He stands, extends his hand. She doesn't take it. My daughter has been telling me about your visits. About how you sit here and pretend to eat invisible food with her. The camera rolls, capturing every word, every gesture. This conversation will be broadcast to hundreds of thousands of people who will judge both of them based on 30 seconds of edited footage. She's taught me more about hunger than 20 years of business school, Marcus says. Has she taught you about what happens to little black girls who trust the wrong people? The accusation hangs in the air like smoke. Marcus understands the fear behind her words. In Vera's world, powerful white men don't sit in parks with poor black children unless they want something. Mama, Kaya interrupts, he eats the invisible soup. He says thank you to the empty plates. He's not trying to take anything. Baby, go play on the swings while Mama talks to Mr. Wellington. Kaya looks between them, sensing the tension crackling like electricity. Are you going to fight about me? We're going to talk about keeping you safe, Vera says. Kaya nods, walks toward the swing set, but Marcus sees her positioning herself where she can hear every word. This child has learned to survive by staying informed. Ms. Martinez, Marcus begins, I want you to know that your daughter saved my life. How? She reminded me what it feels like to be human. Vera's expression softened slightly. Being human doesn't pay for lupus medication. Being human doesn't stop eviction notices. No, it doesn't. But sometimes being human means choosing people over profit. The reporter steps closer, microphone extended. Mr. Wellington, is it true that Wellington Holdings has filed for demolition of this park? The question lands like a grenade in a sanctuary. This is the moment Marcus either owns his complicity or denies it. Either way, someone gets hurt. Yes, he says. The demolition is scheduled for 30 days from now. Vera's face crumbles. Kaya drops her swing chains and runs back to them. You're taking our park away. Kaya's voice breaks on the words. Marcus kneels to her eye level. I'm trying to find a way not to. Trying isn't doing, Vera says. Trying is what people say when they've already decided but want to feel better about it. The camera captures every moment of a 7-year-old's world collapsing in real time. Kaya looks at the empty plates, at the plastic forks arranged with such care, at the invisible chairs that won't be invisible much longer. If you take our park, she says quietly, where will the invisible people eat? What would you do if you saw someone in need? If you believe in compassion, drop a comment and subscribe. Marcus's phone buzzes. A text from his board chairman, emergency meeting called for tomorrow morning. Prepare to explain your absence and this media situation. Your position may be reconsidered. 24 hours to save a park, a little girl's faith, and possibly his entire empire. The weight of impossible choices presses down on him like gravity. But as Kaya carefully packs her plastic plates, whispering apologies to invisible guests who might never get another meal, Marcus realizes that some choices aren't impossible at all. They're just expensive. And tomorrow morning, he'll find out exactly how much hope costs when you're buying it with everything you own. Marcus Wellington's empire is crumbling at 6:47 a.m. His phone shows 127 missed calls, death threats from strangers, and a single text from his lawyer, board voted. You have until noon to resign or face removal. The girl's story went viral overnight. We're hemorrhaging investors. But Marcus isn't thinking about investors. He's thinking about a promise he made to invisible guests at a picnic that changed his life. The footage from yesterday spread across social media like wildfire. Kaya packing plastic plates with tears in her eyes. Vera Martinez confronting a billionaire about her daughter's safety. Marcus admitting he was about to destroy the only place where a child could feed hope to a hungry world. The hashtag Save Kaya's Table is trending. Millions of people are sharing stories about their own invisible feasts, their own hunger for connection in a world that treats empathy like weakness. But viral moments don't pay medical bills. They don't stop eviction notices. And they don't change board votes cast by people who see human beings as line items in development budgets. At 7 a.m., Marcus makes a decision that will either redeem him or destroy him completely. He loads his car with something no billionaire should need to carry: groceries. Not just any groceries. Real food for a real feast. Fried chicken from the corner market where Vera sometimes shops. Mac and cheese from scratch. Cornbread that's still warm. And peach cobbler that smells like the childhood Marcus thought he'd lost forever. He drives to Lincoln Park knowing the news crews will be waiting. Knowing his every move is being broadcast to a world hungry for villains and heroes, unable to understand that sometimes people are both. Kaya is already there, but today her ritual looks different. Desperate. She arranges plastic plates with shaking hands, whispering to empty chairs like she's afraid they might disappear if she stops talking. I brought real food today, Marcus says, setting down 2 full bags. Kaya stares at the groceries like they're a mirage. Real food for invisible guests. Real food for real people who deserve real meals. She touches the bag gently, afraid it might vanish. Mama says you might be in trouble because of us. I'm in trouble because I forgot how to see people. You reminded me. That's worth any trouble. Vera appears from behind the oak tree where she's been watching, waiting to see if this white man with expensive shoes would actually show up when showing up costs everything. She moves slowly, lupus making every step deliberate, but her eyes are sharp as razors. Behind her walks a different kind of army, Mrs. Patterson from 3B who cleans office buildings at night. Rico from the corner store who gives day-old bread to kids who can't afford lunch. Sister Curtis from Mount Olive Baptist who feeds whoever shows up on Sundays, no questions asked. The invisible people are becoming visible. Mr. Wellington, Vera says, studying the grocery bags. You came back. I said I would. You also said you were trying to save our park. Trying and doing are different things. Marcus pulls out his phone, shows her a screenshot. At 9 a.m., I'm meeting with my board to formally withdraw Wellington Holdings from the Lincoln Park project. Win or lose? What happens if you lose? I lose my company. My reputation. Probably my fortune. Vera's expression softens slightly. And if you win? We all get to keep eating together. Kaya claps her hands. Can we have the real feast now? The invisible guests are getting impatient. For the next hour, something magical happens in Lincoln Park. Vera spreads a real tablecloth over the grass. Mrs. Patterson brings folding chairs from her apartment. Rico contributes sodas and plastic cups. Sister Curtis leads them in a prayer that mentions gratitude more than desperation. Marcus finds himself seated between a 7-year-old who talks to invisible friends and a woman whose medical bills could bankrupt families but who still insists everyone gets seconds of cornbread. This cobbler tastes like my grandmother's, Vera says, fork halfway to her mouth. Your daughter told me poor people deserve to eat too. Even if the food isn't real. I figured really poor people deserve really real food. Vera sets down her fork. Studies his face like she's looking for lies hiding behind expensive dental work. Why? She asks. Why risk everything for strangers? Because I used to be you, Marcus says quietly. Sleeping in cars. Pretending we weren't hungry. Watching my mama count food stamps and pretend it was enough. The admission hangs in the air like smoke. The other adults exchange glances. Rich people don't usually admit they were ever poor. It's like confessing to a weakness that money was supposed to cure. What changed? Sister Curtis asks. I forgot that being poor isn't a character flaw. I spent 20 years building walls between who I was and who I became. Your daughter knocked down those walls in one afternoon. Kaya beams, reaches across the table to pat his hand. Invisible walls are easier to knock down than invisible hunger. The wisdom hits everyone at once. Children understand metaphors that adults spend lifetimes trying to forget. Mr. Wellington, Mrs. Patterson says, what happens to us when your fancy board tells you no? Then we find another way. There are laws about community displacement. Regulations about public spaces. And if all else fails, there's the court of public opinion. He gestures to the news crews filming from across the street. Half the country is watching this story. People are angry about inequality. They're tired of feeling powerless. You've given them something to fight for. Rico laughs. A little girl's picnic is going to take down $1 billion corporation. Stranger things have happened. David beat Goliath with nothing but a stone and the belief that some fights are worth having. Vera reaches into her purse, pulls out something that makes everyone at the table go quiet. A crumpled eviction notice. 30 days to vacate the apartment where Kaya has lived her entire life. This came yesterday, she says. Same day as your news cameras. Same day as your promises about saving our park. She smooths the paper flat. Real food tastes good, Mr. Wellington. But real problems need real solutions. The challenge hangs between them like a gauntlet thrown down. Marcus has 1 hour before his board meeting. 1 hour to prove that sitting on grass eating fried chicken with poor people was more than a publicity stunt. Give me your address, he says. Why? Because eviction notices can be challenged. Especially when they're filed by subsidiaries of companies that have other priorities. Vera hands him the notice. Marcus scans it quickly, his expression darkening. This is illegal, he says. 30-day notice without proper cause documentation. Filed by Morrison Properties. He looks up. Morrison Properties is owned by Wellington Holdings. The table goes silent. Even Kaya stops eating. You're evicting us. Vera's voice is barely a whisper. Have you ever doubted someone's kindness? If this resonates, subscribe and share your experience with us. I didn't know, Marcus says. But I know now. And I'm going to fix it. He pulls out his phone, dials his assistant. Gerald, pull all eviction notices filed by our subsidiaries in the past 60 days. I want every family's name, every property address, every reason cited. He hangs up, looks around the table at faces that have shifted from hope to suspicion to something that might be cautious trust. In 2 hours, I'm either going to be the billionaire who saved a park and stopped illegal evictions, or I'm going to be the former billionaire who tried. Either way, no one at this table is losing their home on my watch. But as news vans multiply around the park's perimeter and his phone buzzes with increasingly frantic messages from board members, Marcus realizes he's just made a promise that might be impossible to keep. And somewhere in a corporate boardroom, 17 people are deciding whether compassion is a luxury they can afford. The boardroom at Wellington Holdings is in chaos at 9:47 a.m. 17 executives are screaming at each other while Marcus Wellington's empty chair sits like an accusation at the head of the table. He was supposed to be here an hour ago, defending his decision to torpedo a $47 million development deal for a child's picnic. Instead, he's 3 miles away, watching something impossible happen in Lincoln Park. What started as 5 people sharing fried chicken has become something else entirely. Word spread through the neighborhood like electricity through water. Mrs. Chen from the laundromat arrived with spring rolls and stories about being invisible in America. The Rodriguez family brought homemade tamales and folding tables. Mr. Foster wheeled up in his chair, carrying chess sets and the kind of wisdom that only comes from surviving 83 years in a world that tries to erase you. By 10 a.m., Lincoln Park looks like a festival. 60 people scattered across the grass, sharing food and stories and the radical idea that strangers can become family over plastic plates and real conversation. Kaya moves between groups like a tiny ambassador, introducing invisible guests to visible ones, making sure everyone knows that empty chairs are just as important as filled ones. This is Mama's chair, she tells Mr. Foster, and that one's for people who forgot they matter. Marcus watches from the edge of the crowd, his phone buzzing with increasingly frantic messages from his board. But something about this gathering holds him frozen in place. This isn't just a community picnic. It's a revolution disguised as lunch. Channel 7's news crew has multiplied into 5 different stations. CNN sent a reporter. The story is spreading beyond local interest into something that might reshape how America talks about poverty, compassion, and the cost of looking away. But revolution doesn't pay medical bills. Vera finds Marcus standing apart from the celebration, watching his empire crumble in real time through text messages. "You're missing your meeting," she says. "I'm exactly where I need to be. Even if it costs you everything." Marcus looks at 60 people who were invisible yesterday and visible today, sharing food and laughter like prosperity was their birthright instead of their fantasy. Especially then. A commotion at the park's entrance shifts everyone's attention. 3 black SUVs pull up, expensive and intimidating. Men in suits emerge, carrying briefcases and the kind of authority that makes poor people disappear. The crowd goes quiet. Children move closer to their parents. Adults remember that good things don't usually last when powerful people decide they're inconvenient. Patricia Cross, Marcus's board chairman, approaches the gathering with legal documents and the cold efficiency of someone who's made a career of choosing profit over people. "Mr. Wellington," she calls out, her voice cutting through the sudden silence. "You have a fiduciary responsibility to your shareholders. This performance needs to end." Marcus doesn't move from his spot beside Vera and Kaya. This isn't a performance. This is a community. This is a liability. We've received injunctions from 3 different city departments. Unlawful assembly, permit violations, public safety concerns. She gestures to the families scattered across the grass. "These people need to disperse, and you need to return to the office immediately." Sister Curtis stands up from her folding chair, all 5 feet of her radiating the kind of moral authority that makes boardrooms nervous. "Ma'am, we're not breaking any laws by eating lunch in a public park. You're trespassing on private property scheduled for development." The words hit the crowd like a slap. Private property. The park where their children played, where Kaya fed invisible guests, where community happened organically belongs to the same company that's been displacing families for profit. "This park has been public for 40 years, Mrs. Patterson says, her voice shaking with anger. Patricia Cross opens her briefcase, pulls out a stack of documents. Wellington Holdings acquired the land rights 6 months ago through a city development partnership. As of today, Lincoln Park is private property. Murmurs ripple through the crowd. People start gathering their children, their food, their folding chairs. The magic of community dissolves under the threat of legal consequences. But Kaya doesn't move. She sits cross-legged on her blanket, plastic plates arranged in perfect order, staring at Patricia Cross like she's seeing something the adults have missed. "You can't own chairs that don't exist," she says quietly. The simplicity of it stops everyone cold. A 7-year-old has just challenged corporate property rights with the logic of imagination. Patricia Cross looks down at this child who refuses to be intimidated by briefcases and legal threats. "Little girl, this isn't a game. Real adults have real responsibilities. Real adults made my mama sick by making her work 3 jobs to pay for medicine that costs more than cars. Kaya's voice doesn't rise, but it carries across the suddenly silent park. Real adults made my daddy go away for trying to steal food when we were hungry. Real adults built walls so they don't have to see us. She stands up, walks directly to Patricia Cross, looks up at a woman who controls millions of dollars with decisions made in marble conference rooms. But invisible people don't need permission to exist. The crowd holds its breath. News cameras capture every word. This is the moment that will be replayed on social media for months, the image of a child facing down corporate power with nothing but truth and purple crayon wisdom. Patricia Cross's expression shifts. Something cracks behind her professional mask. For a split second, she looks like someone remembering what it felt like to be powerless. Then the moment passes. The mask returns. Mr. Wellington, you have 1 hour to clear this gathering and report to the office, or the board will vote to remove you as CEO. She turns to leave, then stops. And the eviction proceedings for the Martinez family will continue as scheduled. The threat hangs in the air like poison. Vera's face goes white. Around the park, families start packing faster, the joy of community replaced by the fear of consequences. But as Patricia Cross reaches her SUV, something unexpected happens. A car pulls up behind the black vehicles. Then another. Then a line of vehicles stretching down the block. Families emerge carrying food, blankets, signs that read, "We see you," and, "Invisible no more." The hashtag Save Kaya's Table hashtag brought them here. Teachers and nurses and construction workers and grandmothers and college students who understand that some fights are bigger than the people fighting them. In 10 minutes, 60 people becomes 200. By noon, it might be 1,000. Marcus watches his board chairman realize that silencing one little girl just amplified her voice to a city hungry for heroes. What happens now? Vera asks. Marcus pulls out his phone, stares at 17 missed calls from people who want him to choose money over morality. Now we find out if a billionaire's promise is worth more than a billionaire's fortune. But as police cars begin arriving at the park's perimeter and crowd control barriers appear like walls around hope, Marcus realizes that keeping his promise might require breaking laws he spent 20 years learning to obey. And somewhere in a corporate boardroom, 17 people are about to discover that stealing parks from children is a lot easier than stealing them back from the world. The letter arrives at 11:47 p.m., slipped under Vera Martinez's door while the city sleeps. No return address. No signature. Just typed words that turn hope into fear: stop making noise. Real change doesn't come from paper plates. You have 48 hours to end this circus, or the consequences will be permanent. But this isn't the first letter. It's the 7th. 6 families who joined Kaya's growing picnic movement received identical threats over the past 3 days. Mrs. Chen found hers taped to her laundromat window. The Rodriguez family discovered theirs tucked under their car windshield. Each message carries the same cold precision, the same corporate language that turns human beings into problems to be solved. Vera reads the letter by lamplight, her hands shaking not from lupus but from the recognition that powerful people have noticed her daughter's invisible guests. And when powerful people notice poor people usually disappear. She walks to Kaya's bedroom, watches her daughter sleep clutching a plastic fork like other children hold teddy bears. Tomorrow is Saturday. Another picnic. Another chance for community to bloom in the cracks of a city designed to keep people isolated. But now community comes with consequences. At 6 a.m., Marcus Wellington sits in his empty penthouse, staring at his own letter. Different words, same message: the board has voted. Resign by Monday or face removal and criminal charges for breach of fiduciary duty. The Martinez situation will be handled through proper legal channels. Proper legal channels. Corporate speak for, will destroy them quietly while you watch. His phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Wellington, this is Vera. We need to talk before the picnic. Bring the letters. The letters. Plural. Marcus realizes he's not the only target in this war between compassion and capital. They meet at sunrise in Lincoln Park, empty except for early morning joggers who step carefully around invisible picnic arrangements. Kaya hasn't arrived yet, which means they can speak freely about threats designed to silence children. 7 families got letters, Vera says, pulling crumpled papers from her purse. All the same message. All the same promise of consequences. Marcus reads through them, recognizing the legal language his own company uses to intimidate people into compliance. Cold. Efficient. Designed to make resistance seem pointless. These came from my board, he says. This is how Wellington Holdings removes obstacles. We're not obstacles. We're people. To them, there's no difference. Vera sits on the grass where yesterday 60 strangers became family over shared food and conversation. Now those connections feel fragile, threatened by forces that see community as competition. What happens to the families who don't stop coming, she asks. Evictions. Job losses. Credit destroyed. Immigration status questioned. They have a whole playbook for making problems disappear. The weight of it settles between them like fog. 7 families who dared to believe that poor people deserve public spaces are now marked for systematic destruction. And what happens to you if you don't stop supporting us? Marcus laughs bitterly. I lose my company, my fortune, and probably face criminal charges for violating my fiduciary duties to shareholders. So we all lose everything. Unless we win everything. A car pulls into the park's small lot. Kaya emerges with plastic plates and the determined expression of someone who refuses to let threats steal hope. Behind her, Mrs. Patterson carries folding chairs despite the letters warning her to stay home. Then Rico arrives with his chess sets. Sister Curtis with her homemade biscuits. The Rodriguez family with their tamales and their stubborn faith that sharing food builds stronger walls than fear can tear down. One by one, the same families who received threats last night arrive to continue a tradition that's barely a week old but already feels essential to their survival. Marcus watches invisible people become visible again, despite letters promising permanent consequences. This is either courage or foolishness, and he's not sure there's a difference. Why did they come back, he asks Vera. Because once you've been seen, it's hard to become invisible again. By 9 a.m., the crowd has grown despite the threats. 60 people becomes 80. New faces join familiar ones. Social media brought them here, but something deeper keeps them here. Kaya moves through the gathering like a tiny general, organizing invisible guests and visible ones with equal care. She doesn't know about the letters. Doesn't understand that powerful people want to end her picnics permanently. She just knows that Saturdays mean community, and community means nobody eats alone. But at 10 a.m., everything changes. A black sedan parks at the edge of the gathering. 2 men in expensive suits emerge, carrying cameras and clipboards. They move through the crowd systematically, photographing faces, taking names, creating files on families whose only crime is believing that public parks belong to the public. Immigration enforcement, Mrs. Chen whispers to her husband. They're documenting everyone. Fear ripples through the crowd like electricity. Undocumented families start gathering their children, their food, their dreams of belonging somewhere. Legal residents remember that legal status can become illegal status when powerful people want you gone. The gathering begins to dissolve under the weight of surveillance. But Kaya doesn't understand why people are leaving. She runs to the departing families, confused and heartbroken. Where are you going? We haven't served the invisible soup yet. Mrs. Rodriguez kneels to Kaya's eye level, tears in her eyes. Mija, sometimes invisible is safer. But invisible means hungry. Visible means gone forever. Marcus watches a 7-year-old girl learn that hope has enemies, that community has consequences, that some people would rather destroy gathering places than share them. The men with cameras approach him directly. Mr. Wellington, we have questions about your involvement in this unlawful assembly. This is a picnic in a public park. This is private property owned by your company, being used for political demonstrations without proper permits. The legal trap closes around them like a net. Every act of kindness redefined as lawbreaking. Every moment of community reframed as criminal conspiracy. Vera gathers Kaya close, watching their neighbors disappear under the pressure of questions they can't safely answer. Mama, why do the invisible guests have to be invisible again? Because sometimes showing up is dangerous, baby. But you taught me that showing up is how you help people. The wisdom cuts through adult fear like sunlight through storm clouds. A child who hosts feasts for invisible friends has just reminded everyone why some risks are worth taking. As the park empties and surveillance cameras capture faces that will be added to lists nobody wants to be on, Marcus makes a decision that will either save Kaya's community or destroy everyone connected to it. He pulls out his phone and makes a call that will change everything. Patricia, it's Marcus. Schedule an emergency board meeting for Monday morning. I'm calling a vote of no confidence against myself. And I'm bringing guests. The war between compassion and capital just became personal. And Monday morning, 17 boardroom executives will discover that some 7-year-olds don't stay invisible when their friends are threatened. Kaya Martinez sits at her kitchen table at 5:23 a.m., a broken purple crayon in her hand, writing the words that will either save her community or get her family destroyed. The letter arrived 3 hours ago. The same threat that scattered her picnic, sent families running, turned hope into fear with corporate precision. But 7-year-olds don't understand corporate precision. They understand right and wrong with a clarity that terrifies adults. Her note begins simply, "Dear bad people who want to steal our park." Across the city, Marcus Wellington paces his penthouse, phone buzzing with legal threats and board demands. His company's stock dropped 12% overnight. Investors are pulling out. The picnic that started as one girl's ritual has become a corporate crisis worth millions in lost revenue. But he's not thinking about revenue. He's thinking about a child writing defiance in purple crayon while her mother sleeps, exhausted from working 3 jobs to afford lupus medication. At 6 a.m., Vera wakes to find Kaya's bed empty and a note on the kitchen counter. Not the letter from the corporate lawyers, but something else. Something that makes her blood run cold. "Mama, I'm going to the park early to talk to the invisible guests. Don't worry. Some fights are too important for grown-ups to fight alone. Love, Kaya." Vera grabs her cane and runs faster than lupus should allow, terror driving her toward Lincoln Park where her daughter has gone to wage war against a billion-dollar empire with nothing but stubborn hope. She arrives to find Kaya sitting cross-legged on the grass, surrounded by empty plates arranged in perfect order. But today there's something new. A handwritten sign stuck in the ground next to her blanket. Free food for anyone who needs hope. Invisible guests welcome. Mean people can eat too if they stop being mean. Baby, what are you doing? Fighting back, Mama. Like you taught me. Vera kneels beside her daughter, reading the purple crayon manifesto Kaya has composed in response to corporate intimidation. "Dear bad people, you can't scare us. Our chairs belong to everybody. Even you, if you stop being mean. You have big buildings and scary letters, but we have something bigger. We have each other. And invisible people don't disappear just because you can't see them. We multiply. Love, Kaya and all the invisible guests." The simplicity of it breaks Vera's heart and terrifies her simultaneously. Her daughter has just declared war on the forces that destroy families for profit margins. "Kaya, these people can hurt us in ways you don't understand. They're already hurting us, Mama. They hurt us by pretending we don't exist. But existing isn't permission they get to give or take away." The wisdom cuts through adult fear with surgical precision. A 7-year-old has just defined civil rights in language that could reshape constitutional law. At 7 a.m., the first car arrives. Mrs. Patterson, despite the threats, despite the surveillance, despite everything sensible telling her to stay home. She carries a folding chair and homemade biscuits, her own act of defiance against forces designed to isolate the vulnerable. Child, you shouldn't be out here alone. I'm not alone. The invisible guests are keeping me company. More cars follow. Rico with his chess sets. Sister Curtis with prayers and pound cake. The Rodriguez family, knowing that visibility comes with risk but choosing visibility anyway. By 8 a.m., yesterday's scattered community has reassembled around a child's refusal to be intimidated. 60 people becomes 80 becomes 100, each arrival a middle finger raised toward corporate boardrooms that see human gathering as threat to profit. Marcus receives a text at 8:30, Mr. Wellington, emergency board meeting moved to 9 a.m. Bring your resignation letter. The Martinez situation has escalated beyond acceptable parameters. But Marcus is already in his car, driving toward a park where a little girl has turned corporate intimidation into community mobilization with nothing but purple crayon and unshakable faith. He arrives to find something unprecedented, a grassroots movement organized by a 7-year-old who doesn't understand that poor people aren't supposed to fight back effectively. News trucks multiply around the park's perimeter. Not just local stations now, but national networks drawn by a story too powerful to ignore. Child versus corporation. David versus Goliath with plastic plates and folding chairs. The crowd parts as Marcus approaches Kaya's blanket, where she sits distributing copies of her handwritten manifesto to anyone who'll take one. You came back, she says, offering him a folded paper. I said I would. Adults break promises when keeping them gets expensive. Marcus reads her purple crayon declaration of war against indifference, each word a small bomb exploding assumptions about what children understand about power. Kaya, do you know what happens when you challenge people with more money than you? They try to make you disappear. But I'm already invisible to them, so there's nothing left to take away. The logic floors him. This child has identified the secret weapon of the powerless: when you have nothing left to lose. Patricia Cross arrives at 9:15 with a convoy of security guards and legal documents designed to end the gathering permanently. But she steps out of her black SUV to find something unexpected. 1,000 people now fill Lincoln Park. Families with children, college students, elderly couples, people of every color and class drawn by a story about invisible guests becoming visible community. They hold signs reading, "We see you," and "Invisible no more," and "Some chairs can't be bought." Local businesses have sent food trucks. Musicians have set up impromptu stages. What started as one girl's private ritual has become a public celebration of radical inclusion. Patricia Cross approaches Kaya's blanket with documents that could arrest everyone present for trespassing on private property. But she stops when she sees Kaya's latest purple crayon note, placed carefully on the empty chair reserved for whoever needs it most. Dear lady in the fancy car, this chair is for you too. Even mean people deserve somewhere to sit when they get tired of being mean. Love, Kaya. Can a child's voice change the world? If you believe in empowerment, subscribe and let us know why. The note sits there like an invitation and a challenge, purple crayon words offering forgiveness to someone who came to destroy hope with legal paperwork. Patricia Cross stares at the empty chair, at the handwritten invitation to sit with people she's spent her career displacing, at a 7-year-old who refuses to treat enemies like enemies. Her hand tightens on the injunction papers. Around her, 1,000 people wait to see if corporate power will choose compassion or continue the war against community. And in 90 minutes, 17 board members will vote to destroy Marcus Wellington's empire for the crime of remembering that business serves people, not the other way around. But right now, everything depends on whether a woman who's made millions from evicting families will accept a purple crayon invitation to eat invisible soup with the people she's been trained to erase. Patricia Cross stands frozen beside her black SUV, legal injunction papers trembling in her hands, staring at a purple crayon invitation that just shattered 20 years of corporate armor. Around her, 1,000 people wait to see if a woman who profits from erasing communities will accept a seat at a 7-year-old's table. The chair sits empty, waiting. Kaya's latest note tucked carefully beneath a plastic plate: even mean people deserve cake on birthdays. Today is October 15th. Kaya Martinez turns 8 years old, surrounded by a movement she accidentally started with invisible friends and impossible hope. Patricia Cross takes one step forward. Then another. Her expensive heels sink into grass stained by dreams deferred and promises kept by people who had nothing to give but everything to share. She sits. The crowd exhales collectively, watching corporate power choose humanity over quarterly reports for the first time in Lincoln Park's history. Kaya beams, passes Patricia an empty plate, and whispers the words that will echo in boardrooms for decades. Now you're not invisible either. Marcus Wellington arrives as news helicopters circle overhead, broadcasting the image that will define American compassion for a generation: a billionaire's board chairman eating imaginary cake with the child she tried to evict. "Happy birthday, Kaya," Marcus says, settling into his usual spot on the grass. "I made a wish," she replies, blowing out candles on a real birthday cake donated by Mrs. Chen's bakery. "But I can't tell you what it was, or it won't come true." Around them, Lincoln Park transforms into something unprecedented. Food trucks line the streets, their owners refusing payment for meals served to families who usually count dollars before ordering. Musicians perform on makeshift stages built from donated lumber. Artists paint faces and dreams on children who've learned that visibility comes with both power and danger. Local businesses hang banners reading, "We see you," and "Invisible no more." Churches empty their fellowship halls to bring tables and chairs. The mayor arrives with a proclamation declaring October 15th, Community Visibility Day, in honor of a girl who taught a city that empty chairs matter as much as filled ones. But the real transformation happens in conversations scattered across the grass. Strangers become neighbors. Stories get shared. Barriers built by fear and maintained by indifference crumble under the weight of radical inclusion. Patricia Cross finds herself talking to Vera Martinez about lupus medication costs, discovering that healthcare poverty touches families regardless of zip code. Rico teaches her to play chess, explaining how strategy games prepared him for navigating immigration bureaucracy. Sister Curtis shares pound cake and wisdom about surviving systems designed to break spirits. "I spent my career making people disappear," Patricia tells Kaya during a quiet moment. "I convinced myself I was creating value, but I was really creating emptiness." "Empty isn't bad," Kaya replies, arranging fresh flowers around invisible place settings. "Empty means there's room for more people." The simplicity cuts through decades of justification. A child who hosts feasts for no one has just redefined abundance for someone who hoards everything. At 2 p.m., Marcus receives the text he's been expecting: "Board meeting concluded. Removal vote postponed pending community impact assessment. Your position remains under review. Recommend immediate damage control." Damage control. Corporate speak for making today's miracle disappear into tomorrow's forgotten news cycle. But as Marcus surveys 1,000 people celebrating an 8-year-old's birthday with the intensity usually reserved for national holidays, he realizes some damage can't be controlled. Some breaks in the system become breaks towards something better. What happens now? Vera asks, watching her daughter teach chess to executives who arrived to serve eviction notices and stayed to serve invisible soup. "Now we find out if today was a moment or a movement," Marcus replies. Kaya overhears, looks up from her chess lesson with solemn eyes that have seen too much for 8 years. "Moments disappear, but movements multiply," she says. Like invisible guests. The more people who believe, the more real they become. As afternoon fades toward evening, the crowd doesn't disperse. Instead, it organizes. Contact information gets exchanged. Committees form around long-term goals: affordable housing advocacy, healthcare access, community gardens, tutoring programs, elder care networks. The invisible are becoming undeniably, unstoppably visible. Patricia Cross stands to leave as sunset paints Lincoln Park in gold light, but Kaya stops her with a final purple crayon note. Thank you for eating cake with us. Your invisible chair will always be here when you need it. Love, Kaya, and all the people you helped remember they exist. Patricia folds the note carefully, places it in her briefcase next to legal documents that suddenly seem less important than purple crayon wisdom. Will I see you next Saturday? Kaya asks. I'll be here, Patricia promises, surprising herself with how much she means it. As families pack folding chairs and leftover dreams, Kaya surveys her birthday celebration with the satisfaction of someone who measured success in smiles instead of stock prices. Did you have a good birthday, baby? Vera asks. The best, Kaya replies. All my invisible guests got to be real today. Marcus helped stack plastic plates, each one a small monument to the radical idea that community happens when people choose connection over isolation, inclusion over indifference. What was your birthday wish? He asks. Kaya looks around Lincoln Park, where 1,000 strangers learned each other's names, shared each other's stories, and discovered that invisible people become visible when someone cares enough to set extra chairs. I wished that tomorrow, someone else would have invisible friends who need a place to eat, she says. And that grown-ups would remember that everyone gets hungry, even people with full stomachs. How do you celebrate those who go unnoticed? Share your thoughts in the comments. 6 months later, Lincoln Park hosts its 26th consecutive Saturday community feast. The gathering has spawned similar movements in 47 cities. Patricia Cross resigned from Wellington Holdings to start a non-profit focused on community-driven development. Marcus Wellington's company now builds affordable housing instead of luxury towers. And every Saturday, a little girl who turns invisible hunger into visible hope sets one empty chair for whoever needs it most, proving that the most powerful force in America isn't money or politics or corporate boardrooms. It's an 8-year-old who refuses to let anyone eat alone. Will you stay quiet, or will you help expose more stories like this? A text message. 3 words. $1 billion corporation and the life of a little girl, hanging in the balance. Marcus Wellington stood on the grass, surrounded by 1,000 people celebrating, as the screen in his hand lit up with one phrase, damage control. That was the moment Marcus realized his loyalty to his daughter's movement would cost him everything. Not just his job, but his legacy. 6 months had passed since Kaya's birthday. The small, radical act of one woman, Patricia Cross, sitting at a child's table had turned into a full-fledged movement. A movement with a name, the Empty Chair Project. Every Saturday, Lincoln Park filled with people. Not just for free food, but for something more profound, a promise. A promise that no one would be left out. The gatherings had spread to over 40 cities, from Atlanta to Oakland. Communities were building their own tables. Patricia, now a pariah in the corporate world, was using her old skills for new purposes. Her nonprofit, Community First, was successfully blocking evictions and turning abandoned lots into community gardens. She was undoing her own past, one empty lot at a time. It was a beautiful, complicated redemption story. But for Marcus, it was a different kind of fight. His board, controlled by old money and older prejudices, saw the Empty Chair Project as an existential threat. They called it socialist lunacy. They demanded he stop funding Patricia's work, that he evict Kaya and her family from their building, and that he use his influence to shut the movement down. Marcus refused. Their counterattack was swift and brutal. They started by quietly leaking stories about Patricia's past, twisting her redemption into a cynical public relations stunt. Then they went for Marcus's company. They pulled funding from his largest projects, driving down his stock price. The message was clear: conform or be crushed. The week before Kaya's 9th birthday, the board sent Marcus a final ultimatum. A private jet waited to fly him to an emergency meeting in Bermuda. They would vote to remove him as chairman unless he signed a document agreeing to liquidate his company's social impact division and sell the Lincoln Park property to a luxury condominium developer. Will you choose what's right, or what's easy? On the morning of October 14th, the day before Kaya's birthday, Marcus stood on the porch of the Martinez family's home. He held the legal documents that would undo all the good that had been done. He hadn't told anyone he was coming. The morning was cool, the air thick with the smell of autumn and something else, the quiet before a storm. Kaya opened the door. Her eyes, which had seen so much, looked up at him. "You came for cake?" she asked. Marcus shook his head. "Not exactly, Kaya." He gestured to the park, now filled with people setting up for the next day's feast. "They're trying to take this away from you." Kaya didn't look scared. She just looked sad. "I know," she said. "But you won't let them." It wasn't a question. It was a statement of faith. A small girl's impossible hope. That's the thing about movements. They start with a single action, but they grow on the faith of the people who believe in them. And that faith, Marcus realized, was a weapon. One they couldn't control. He turned to look at the park. Every person there had their own story, their own struggles. People who had been ignored, forgotten, made to feel invisible. He saw Rico teaching chess to a new student. He saw Vera Martinez, laughing with Patricia, their friendship a testament to healing. Marcus felt a surge of defiance. He had spent his life building a corporate empire. He knew how to play their game. He just had to stop playing by their rules. He went back to his car, not to fly to Bermuda, but to make a different kind of call. A call to the press. Do you ever feel like your voice doesn't matter? The next morning, the headlines were everywhere. Wellington betrays board, vows to fight for the empty chair project. A board meeting was no longer a private affair. It was now a public spectacle, a modern-day showdown between profit and purpose. The board, furious, leaked a counter-story. They accused Marcus of corporate malfeasance, of using company funds to promote a personal agenda. They claimed he was unfit to lead. The rhetoric was designed to turn public opinion against him. But they had underestimated the power of the movement. The community responded not with anger, but with action. People started buying Wellington holding stock, a symbolic act of support. It was a drop in the ocean, but the message was clear, they were fighting back. That afternoon, Kaya walked through the park with a new purple crayon note. She wasn't just inviting people to eat, she was inviting them to a different kind of table. A table where everyone had a voice. She placed the note on an empty chair near the stage. Where does a true movement find its power? The note read, "This chair is for anyone who has been told they don't belong. We save a seat for you. We see you." The board meeting was held via video conference. Marcus, from his Lincoln Park office, looked at the faces of the people who had been his allies for decades. Now, they were his adversaries. They laid out their case, their voices cold and calculated, focused on numbers and quarterly reports. Then, Marcus took his turn. He didn't talk about profits or stock prices. He showed them a video. Not of a protest or a rally, but of the park itself. He showed them the faces of the people who had been made visible. He showed them a little girl teaching a formerly powerful executive how to play chess. He ended with a simple statement. You can vote to remove me. You can sell this park. But you can't erase a movement built on the simple idea that everyone deserves a seat at the table. Because that isn't corporate power. That's a human truth. The room was silent. The vote was called. Marcus's fate, and the fate of the empty chair project, would be decided in the next few minutes. He watched as the numbers flashed on the screen. Will you stay quiet, or will you help expose more stories like this? He had laid his career, his fortune, and his legacy on the line. The numbers on the screen flickered. 100 years of corporate tradition, 100 years of backroom deals and closed-door decisions, now being decided by a simple vote. A vote to remove him. A vote to dismantle a movement started by an 8-year-old girl and her invisible friends. It was a climax built not on violence, but on the quiet, unyielding power of humanity. The final tally came in. The vote was a tie. The chairman of the board, Marcus Wellington himself, held the deciding vote. The board members stared back at him through their screens, their faces a mix of shock and fury. The man who had once been their architect of profit was now the one who could tear it all down. He had already sacrificed everything. Now, he had to make the choice that would define him forever. He didn't hesitate. He voted to remove himself. The silence that followed was louder than any argument. The board had won the battle, but they had lost the war. They could remove Marcus, but they couldn't erase the video he had shown. They couldn't ignore the public pressure. They had forced him out, but in doing so, they had made him a martyr. A symbol. What happens when the powerful fall from their thrones? The news of Marcus's resignation sent shockwaves through the corporate world. But in Lincoln Park, the people had already decided his fate. They didn't see him as a disgraced executive, they saw him as a hero. The man who had given up everything to fight for them. On the morning of Kaya's 9th birthday, the park was different. It wasn't just a place for a meal, it was a gathering of defiance and hope. 1,000 people had come, not just to celebrate, but to make a statement. They brought with them not just food, but something else, chairs. 1,000 empty chairs. They arranged the chairs in the center of the park. It was a slow, deliberate process. A quiet, powerful assembly. As the sun rose higher, the shape began to emerge. A single, gigantic word, formed by 1,000 empty chairs, visible from the circling news helicopters: enough. Patricia Cross, now a full-time advocate, stood beside Vera Martinez. They watched as the word took shape. "It's incredible," Patricia whispered. "It's not just a word. It's a promise." The irony was profound. The woman who had profited from creating emptiness was now helping a community fill it with meaning. When has one person's voice become a movement? The people began to fill the spaces between the chairs, eating and talking. Stories were shared, just as they had been on Kaya's 8th birthday. But this time, the stories were different. They were tales of what had been accomplished in the last 6 months. Stories of neighbors helping neighbors, of new gardens blooming on old foundations, of legal battles won against impossible odds. The invisible had become not just visible, but powerful. Kaya, now 9, walked through the chairs, a new purple crayon note in her hand. She didn't look for her invisible friends today. She looked at the faces of the people who had become her real ones. She found Marcus, sitting alone on a park bench. He looked weary, but his eyes held a new light. The light of a man who had nothing left to lose, and everything to gain. She handed him the note. It was simple, just like the first one. "Sometimes, you have to lose your chair to find your place." Marcus read it, a small smile playing on his lips. He understood. He had lost his corporate chair, but in the process, he had found his true seat. At a table with a little girl who had taught him what power truly meant. It wasn't about control or profit. It was about connection. It was about caring enough to set an empty chair. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park, the word "enough" seemed to glow. It wasn't a threat. It was a declaration. A promise that this movement, started by a single act of kindness, would not be silenced. The last note from Kaya was found tucked under the empty chair at the head of the gi. It read, "The most powerful wish isn't for something to come true. It's for someone to know they're not alone. I wish that every empty chair would be a sign that someone is waiting for you. And if you're the one who needs a place, we'll always have a seat saved. What will you do to ensure no one sits alone? If you feel inspired, subscribe and let us know how you'll take action." 6 months later, the Empty Chair Project has spawned similar movements in 47 cities. Patricia Cross resigned from Wellington Holdings to start a non-profit focused on community-driven development. Marcus Wellington's company now builds affordable housing instead of luxury towers. And every Saturday, a little girl who turns invisible hunger into visible hope sets one empty chair for whoever needs it most, proving that the most powerful force in America isn't money or politics or corporate boardrooms. It's an 8-year-old who refuses to let anyone eat alone. Will you stay quiet, or will you help expose more stories like this?